we either have a bill or Joe Manchin will never support anything, and he's been lying to us for the past year and a half. It's very clear. You can just thank Joe Manchin if you're glad that interest rates aren't even higher.
How does President Biden's performance rate? Awful. I mean, I knew that was the answer. But the answer is awful.
Parents around the country are incredibly anxious to finally get access to their vaccines for their youngest kids, and that seems to be around the corner.
MSNBC and CNN are both now flip-flopping on their positions, attacking President Biden. The FDA has approved the vaccine for COVID for kids under 5 and guaranteed nobody cares. Elon Musk addressed the Twitter board and, what else is there? Maybe we'll get to the China-Taiwan thing. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. On today, it is June 17th, the year of our Lord 2022. It is Friday. You're headed into the weekend. Might as well head off on a funny note. We've got some hilarious clips that are juxtaposing what hosts on MSNBC said a couple months ago and what they're saying now, as well as CNN doing a massive reversal on how they believe President Biden is doing. Also, the FDA approved vaccines for kids under the age of 5. We'll talk about that and the statistics surrounding that interesting component. But first, this. I want to get to this. This is freaking fascinating. Joe Scarborough, host of MSNBC, former Republican congressman turned DC swamp guy, hosts the morning show on MSNBC called Morning Joe. Now, Morning Joe sometimes is a little bit more fair on things, especially because I believe he comes from a conservative background, but is very, very ingrained into the DC swamp. A couple months ago, he was remarking on Senator Joe Manchin not going along with the Democrats' Build Back Better, $3.5 trillion, probably closer to $6 trillion plan to spend more money. But now that inflation has gone up, Morning Joe has changed his tune. Watch this clip. These clips are a little bit lengthy, but trust me, they're worth every second of it because of the juicy goodness of saying, yeah, we told you so, dude. Watch this clip from Morning Joe in just January of 2022, in which he's talking about Senator Joe Manchin holding up the Build Back Better plan. Watch this.
You get Joe Manchin and you get Joe Biden, and you put them in a room. And you say, we're not going to get out of this room until one of two things happen. One, we have a deal. Or two, we're going to have a press conference where we go out and announce that Joe Manchin does not support any piece of legislation regarding Build Back Better. We either have a bill or Joe Manchin will never support anything, and he's been lying to us for the past year and a half. It's very clear.
So that's Joe Scarborough talking about, like he said, Joe Manchin, saying that, well, what just needs to happen is you need to put Manchin in the room and Biden in the room. And then if they can't figure it out, the Biden administration and Democrats should come out with a press conference and say, look, Joe Manchin won't work with us. He's a terrible person. He's been lying to us for the last year and a half. He won't do what we need him to do. Now that inflation is at 8.5%, new inflation numbers keep going up. Not a good thing for the American consumer, but that just is what it is. And unfortunately, we're all going to have to just deal with it. But now that inflation is the biggest topic on people's minds, especially heading into the midterm, people like Joe Scarborough on MSNBC are singing a different tune just a couple months later. Watch this clip and see if you notice a difference in attitude towards one Senator Joe Manchin. Check this out.
You and I have spent our adult lives warning about rising deficits, rising debt. There have been many progressive economists saying that we were Chicken Littles, saying the sky is falling, the sky is falling. This is what we've been warning of. This is what happens. I was wondering why it was taking so long, but you flood the economy with too much money, with too much government debt, with too many, too many government programs, too much deficit spending. This is exactly what happens. And my God, I just wonder what would have happened if progressives had gotten their $6 trillion wish earlier this year.
Yeah, in an ironic way, you almost have to thank Joe Manchin for blocking that, because $6.5 trillion of spending in this economy would make these numbers look small. Yeah, look, we had a huge budget deficit. We had an unbelievably aggressive reaction by the Fed to the pandemic. You can kind of understand why they were trying, but they just tried too hard. And now we're all going to pay the consequences in a very, very tough environment over the next year or two while this gets sorted out.
And by the way, I wouldn't even say ironically thank Joe Manchin. You can just thank Joe Manchin if you're glad that interest rates aren't even higher.
So that clip was piggybacking on the news that the Fed has jacked up interest rates again, which they're going to continue doing because this is going to sound bad, and it is bad. The way that you kill inflation is you make it so difficult for anybody to do business or spend money. You scare everyone so much that they stop spending money, so you keep jacking up the interest rates. That's the only way you stop inflation, and that's just the situation that we're in. But the onset of this clip, Joe Scarborough is saying, well, we've been saying for years, Steve, this is Steve Ratner, I believe this is, that was Obama's finance person. I forget what Steve Ratner's qualifications are. Sorry, Steve. But Joe Scarborough is saying what we've been saying for our entire lives. This is absolutely going to happen. This is what you get when you quit spending money. And honestly, just as long as I'm being fair here, I think Joe Scarborough actually might have held those beliefs at one time. He was, again, a Republican congressman in Congress. And so maybe he actually did at one time believe, yeah, we can't spend all this money because inflation is going to happen and hyperinflation is going to happen. But since he's taken the job at MSNBC, however many, probably almost a decade that he's been there, maybe even over that. But he's been saying stuff like, yeah, Joe Manchin can't even come to the table with Democrats. Just, January, 5 months ago, saying that? And now going, wow, geez, I've been saying this for years that this was going to happen. I can't believe that people didn't listen to me. And then Ratner saying, you can almost ironically thank Joe Manchin. Then Joe Scarborough then says, no, not even ironically, you can fully thank Joe Manchin that interest rates aren't even going up higher than that. Dude, the flip-flopping is hilarious at this point. If you haven't already, click the little like button, the little share button. I would really appreciate you doing that. There's several hundred more people watching than have clicked the little like button, so I'd really appreciate if you could just hit the little like button and the little share button if you can, because people have to see this story. Speaking of mega cable news platforms trying to right the ship, this was on CNN recently. It was either yesterday or the day before that. But Anderson Cooper, who honestly, Anderson Cooper went off the rails for a couple of years. Before Donald Trump, I thought Anderson Cooper was a very, very fair, even-handed journalist. He, I think, took direction from Jeff Zucker over at CNN when Jeff Zucker was running the place, and said, went off the rails a little bit, as much as CNN did. I can't say the same for Don Lemon. Don Lemon's always kind of been a hack. But Anderson Cooper seemed to be kind of a straight and narrow type guy. CNN has actually openly been talking about how they're going more down the straight and narrow, I think. Zucker got fired, March of this year, February of this year? And the new leadership is saying, hey, we can't do all of this crazy partisan stuff and continue to make money. I don't know if you remember CNN Plus, didn't do super great. But even the other day, Don Lemon was interviewing Karine Jean-Pierre and hitting her pretty hard on what are you guys doing in the White House? Anyways, this is a clip from CNN where Anderson Cooper asks, I'm not sure who this guy is, finance, economics guy, how do you think Biden is doing? Here's his answer.
How does President Biden's performance rate?
Awful. I mean, I knew that was the answer. The answer is awful. I mean, I'll compare it to Carter at this point in his presidency, right? Look at the disapproval rating Joe Biden has on inflation right now. It's over 70%. Carter was not even there at this point in mid-1978. When you're doing worse than Jimmy Carter's doing in the minds of Americans on inflation, you know that they're holding you responsible for the conditions that are currently on the ground that are hurting Americans in their pocketbooks.
Sorry about that blank screen there. Again, there's not really much more that I can say on that because it's pretty bad. They spent 4 or 5 minutes before this clip in the same segment talking about how bad things are. So I'm not sure what this is a sign of. I think it's pretty evident and pretty clear that Democrats are about to get shellacked in the midterms, which is going to then put it on Republicans to, hey, whatever you can do. I know you don't have the presidency, but whatever you can do to right the ship, you should probably start. Well, you're going to get that opportunity in November. It's pretty clear that Republicans are going to take back the House and maybe the Senate. If they take back both houses, that'll be interesting. I don't think they'll have enough to override any veto from the president's office, but I don't know. It'll be interesting. I've been doing a lot of complaining, and I think once November rolls around, they're going to have their opportunity to make good on some of those promises. So I hope they do. But speaking of the federal government, this is actually an interesting story that I feel like is going to get way, way more attention than it actually deserves, including on this show. We're going to talk about it because I think there's some statistics here that are pretty dang interesting. The FDA approved the COVID-19 vaccine shot for kids 5 and under. Now, my first thought on this, is I would imagine thought that many of you had, whether you're a parent or a grandparent, is who cares? I don't care. Do you care? No, I don't care. Do you care? I don't care. Literally don't care at all. If it starts getting forced on kids to go to school or anything like that, now we've got a problem. Now I care a lot. But the FDA coming out and saying it's FDA approved for kids under the age of 5, who cares? And the reason that nobody cares are some statistics that I'll explain to you after I watch this video. Because like you, I think, and like me, I didn't care at all about this. But there are people out there that are saying that finally parents are able to get their kids the shot. Watch this guy from ABC News talking about how anxious parents have been patiently awaiting the COVID-19 shot. Check this out.
Parents around the country are incredibly anxious to finally get access to their vaccines for their youngest kids, and that seems to be around the corner. With FDA advisory meetings happening next week, and essentially the likely pathway to authorization by the FDA and CDC, we will see vaccines in our youngest kids likely towards the end of June. This is incredibly exciting because this represents an 18 million person cohort that is yet to have access to the vaccine. And while many parents are anxiously awaiting, of course, many are still concerned about whether the vaccine is safe and effective.
I just like the intro to that part, that first clip there where he says, parents are just anxious and waiting so long for their kids to be vaccinated. Here's why, statistically, I think nobody actually cares. This is from CNN. In about half of U.S. counties in the United States of America, less than 10% of children ages 5 to 11, are fully vaccinated, according to a CNN analysis of the data from the U.S. Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention. So according to CDC data, CNN analysis says that half of all of the counties in the country, less than 10% of kids 5 to 11 are fully vaccinated. But even though they've been eligible for nearly 5 months, around the country, less than 28% of children aged 5 to 11 are fully vaccinated. So even in the deepest blue states and cities, including all of them, less than 28% of kids age 5 to 11. So that's the youngest group to be eligible for the shot. But the reality is that parents don't want to get it for their kid. Now, statistically speaking, kids are at substantially little less risk, very, very little risk, which thank God, by the way. But we've talked about it many times on this show. Kids have almost zero risk to any severe outcome, severely bad outcome from having the CCP bat fever. But if you're going to take that 28% of kids being fully eligible, or of eligible kids being fully vaccinated, so what is that number in reverse? 72% of American parents decided, yeah, we're not getting our 5 to 11-year-old the COVID shot, which would include, statistically, it would have to include not only Republicans, but also Democrats and also independents. What, like 47% of America is registered as a Republican if you're registered to vote? The rest have to be, that doesn't, bottom line is that doesn't make up the entirety of parents who have kids in that age bracket. There needs to be a substantial chunk of Democrats and independents also saying, yeah, I don't think I need that for my kid. So there's that. That's really all there is to that. The FDA officially and finally has approved that. And I want to get to this story before we end the week. Kind of on a, I don't know, happy note, maybe we'll call it that. This is Elon Musk. Elon Musk addressed Twitter, the Twitter staff at an all-hands Zoom meeting. The one thing I thought was interesting about this is Elon's camera setup. He's got like super close. His face is like really close. I just feel like, you're a billionaire. I don't know, get a nicer camera or like an assistant that frames you up a little nicer, knowing that this is going to leak to the public. But our good friends at Project Veritas had somebody leak this footage to them, and it's Elon Musk addressing the staff. Now, the whole video that they put out is like 2.5 minutes long. This is like the 30 seconds, and I really wanted to bring this up so that any of the lefty friends that I have that may be watching, I consider you friends. Maybe we disagree on things, but that's just the way things work. But any of the lefty friends that I have can see that Elon Musk is definitely 100% not a right-wing extremist as he's been portrayed in the media and on Twitter and through a lot of your lefty talking channels. If you haven't already, I would appreciate it if you click the little like button, maybe the little share button. Helps us get to more people, helps us stay on, continue what we're doing. But here's Elon Musk addressing the Twitter staff about how he sees Twitter and how he thinks it's going to operate in the future.
I think an important goal for Twitter would be to try to include as much of the country, as much of the world as possible. So the things that I've said about Twitter, I think need to happen in order for it to be, to really go to the next level. I mean, I think like the potential is there for Twitter to have be accessible to an order of magnitude more people. Let's say the far left 10% and far right 10% were equally upset on Twitter, then that would probably be a good outcome. The standard is much more than not offending people. The standard should be that they're very entertained and informed.
So there's right-wing extremist Elon Musk. If you're just listening, I'm using the air quotes when I say Elon Musk is a right-wing extremist because he said pretty blatantly, and he's been saying this for a while. This is not new. It's just the most recent iteration of Elon Musk saying this. He's saying that, well, if the furthest 10% on the left and the furthest 10% on the right are equally upset, that means we're probably doing a pretty good job. Most of America's, I don't want to say in the middle, but center right and center left. That's just the reality. As a whole, collectively, this is a center right country. There's really no denying that. Just demographically, it's not really even an opinion. That's just kind of how it is. We are a center right country. But back to Elon Musk. Yeah, no, he's very much not what the left has been portraying him to be when he's going through his Twitter purchase. So there's that. There's really not much else on that front. You know what? Maybe the China thing is not imminent, but maybe we'll get to that on Monday. I know I've been talking about it the last couple days that we'll get to it, but that's we'll head on into the weekend. Not early, but on time. Thanks so much for tuning in each and every day. I know there's a lot of you that watch every single day. I see the messages, I see the comments. Really, really appreciate you doing that. I love doing it, so would love to keep doing it as long as I can. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media platforms. Just type in JOBOB to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Getter, Truth. Anything else? Ibble. I forget all of the things that I'm on nowadays. Oh, Be Real, I guess, is a thing. Anyways, you can get me on any of those social media platforms. Would appreciate a follow and continue the conversation there. Let's see. Anything else? I don't know. Going to be a good weekend. I hope you have a great weekend. I'm going to be in San Diego at a good friend's wedding, which really only matters to the guys that I play basketball with. I will not be there to dominate the paint and drain threes from beyond the arc. Sorry about that, fellas. Maybe you can look forward to next week for me crushing you on the court, as happens week in and week out. That's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much for tuning in to Daily Caller Live. We will see you Monday, same time, same place. God bless America.